When Jalen Hurts was infamously benched by Nick Saban at halftime of the 2018 National Championship, it appeared he had been left for dead in Tuscaloosa. But to the surprise of many, the quarterback bounced back and has since carved out a criminally underrated NFL career. This is the story of how Jalen Hurts went from being benched at Alabama to becoming one of the NFL's top quarterbacks. It all began in 1998. Jalen Alexander Hurts was born in Houston, Texas, and raised by a family rooted deep in a love for football in the nearby suburb of Channelview. His father, Averion Sr., was the local high school's football coach. The thrill of watching his father go to work on the Channelview Falcons sideline under the Friday night lights captivated a young Jalen and his older brother, Averion Jr., inspiring them both to test their skills on the gridiron as they grew up. Jalen Hurts' rise to prominence began with a superb breakout year as a junior in 2014. His physical ability was on full display early and often, and his mental fortitude became apparent when he led his team to beat the powerhouse program, North Shore High School, with a 36-yard strike for the go-ahead score in the fourth quarter. Not only was it Channelview's first time beating North Shore, but the victory secured their first winning season in over 20 years. This, alongside Jalen Hurts' 2,708 total yards for 22 scores on the season, had college offers from across the country pouring in. But when Alabama came calling in early 2015, the decision became a whole lot easier for Jalen and his family. A stellar senior season would see Jalen enroll early at Bama, ready to compete in 2016. Alabama football was notorious for being impossible to break into the starting lineup as a true freshman, but Jalen Hurts believed in his ability and balled out in spring ball, telling one of the assistants that his goal was to make all of the other quarterbacks transfer out. While that may sound dramatic, Jalen's performances in practice had been so impressive that Bama's offensive coordinator, Lane Kiffin, insisted to Nick Saban that he should start the opening game for their national title defense. Coach Saban would eventually heed to Kiffin's recommendation after an uninspiring start from Blake Barnett against USC, with Jalen coming in for the third series of the game. Ready to justify the choice, he fumbled a fake handoff on his first snap. This would easily destroy most players' confidence and ruin their chances of ever seeing the field again in crimson and white. But not Jalen. He began to string a few passes and runs together, looking just as composed as he had all of high school, proving he was never out of the game with a 39-yard dot to Ardarius Stewart in the end zone, opening Bama's scoring in a 52-6 blowout victory. 2 weeks later, he earned the starting job outright and went on to win SEC Offensive Player of the Year for his nearly 2,800 yards through the air, to go with just shy of 1,000 yards on the ground, producing 36 total scores. Jalen Hurts and company lost a tight battle with the Clemson Tigers in the national championship game, but Jalen had shown his worth, even scoring a go-ahead 30-yard rushing touchdown with just 2 minutes left to play. Most importantly, he'd accomplished his goal. All of the other quarterbacks had transferred out, replaced by 2 incoming freshmen, Mac Jones and Tua Tagovailoa. While his 2017 was less explosive, the team kept winning, allowing the freshman Tua to come in as a reliever in multiple games. Back in the national championship for a second consecutive year, Jalen Hurts and the Tide were determined to improve upon their previous year's effort. But finding themselves down 13-0 at halftime, with Jalen completing just 3 of 8 passes, wasn't going to cut it for Coach Saban. They needed precision through the air, and in a fork-in-the-road moment in program history, Nick Saban gave true freshman Tua Tagovailoa the reins of the offense, producing an inspired comeback win in overtime. As confetti rained down, Jalen was among the first to humbly celebrate with Tua and the Crimson Tide offense, admirably parking the immense concerns he surely had for his future. Tua was named Bama's starter going forward, effectively swapping roles with Jalen Hurts, who was determined to stay and contribute. avoiding any drama while securing his college degree. That was until an ankle injury took Tua out of the SEC championship game against Georgia, thrusting Jalen into the heat of a fourth-quarter battle. When called upon, he answered, delivering a 10-yard passing score to tie the game at 28 apiece, sealing the deal with a clutch 15-yard rush, willing his way into the end zone for one last reminder of what he was capable of. After then returning to the bench to watch Tua lead the Crimson Tide to another national championship game, which they lost to Clemson, Hurts decided he was ready to make his mark elsewhere. He announced his decision to transfer to the University of Oklahoma shortly after the national championship loss, joining forces with the quarterback whisperer Lincoln Riley, who had just led Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray to Heisman-winning campaigns. He vindicated the decision on his debut, posting 6 total touchdowns with an 87% pass completion rate against the University of Houston, setting the tone for his best season yet. With 3,851 passing yards and 1,298 rushing to go along with 53 total touchdowns, including 1 receiving, Jalen Hurts had reached another level. If it weren't for an unreal season from Joe Burrow, he would have won the Heisman and possibly had a shot at a 4th straight national championship appearance. Nevertheless, he left the college game as a winner with a 38-4 record as a starter. No longer a run-first quarterback, but a dual-threat playmaker in his purest form, Hurts's 1 year in Norman was a tour de force, revitalizing his NFL dreams. During the pre-draft process, there were lingering doubts about his effectiveness as a passer, which saw him graded as a Day 2 pick. He was selected 53rd overall by the Eagles in the 2020 NFL Draft, thrust into a delicate quarterback situation. Carson Wentz had led Philly to a division title in 2019, but was visibly far from his best. Jalen wouldn't start over him, but found his way into some specially designed plays in the first half of his rookie year, as he donned the number 2, once again making the most of another backup spot. Unfortunately, the Eagles went on to have one of the worst offenses in the league in 2020. They failed to score 30 points in any game, while Carson Wentz led the league in interceptions with 15. The situation was so dire by Week 14 that head coach Doug Peterson gave Jalen the starting job. While he led Philly to victory in his debut against the Saints and posted an impressive 4 total touchdowns against the Cardinals the following week, Jalen had significant room for improvement, finishing 1-3 as the starter, but he looked promising. The Eagles brass liked what they saw in Hurts, encouraging them to ship Carson Wentz off to the Indianapolis Colts and trading up to grab a familiar face to their new quarterback in Alabama's Devontae Smith. It was clear that the Eagles were building around Jalen, and he celebrated that by switching his number to number uno. Philly's new starter became number 1, and with a new coaching staff led by Nick Sirianni, the Eagles improved from a 4-win team to 9-8, good enough for a wildcard spot. Despite the team improvements, Jalen hadn't entirely convinced the Eagles fan base, with some lowlights, such as a 3-interception performance against the Giants, immediately followed by a remarkable performance from his backup Gardner Minshew. Jalen was also far from his best against Tampa Bay in the playoffs, throwing 2 picks on the biggest stage of his professional career thus far. This set up 2022 as Hurts's make-or-break season, so he would have been delighted to receive a significant boost on draft night when the Eagles traded for A.J. Brown. Needless to say, the Philadelphia offense was firing on all cylinders in that 2022 campaign, with Hurts looking more accurate and confident in the passing game, while remaining dominant on the ground as well. The tush-push, or brotherly shove, was largely to thank for that, but Jalen Hurts' value to this team was undeniable. They lost both of the games he missed, but upon his return, secured their 14th win of the season, tying a franchise QB record and clinching the NFC 1 seed in the process. After trouncing both the Giants and Niners at home, Hurts was headed to his first Super Bowl. While he was no stranger to big occasions, Jalen was out to prove that there was no replacing him in this championship game. With 3 scores on the ground in a 2-point conversion to go with a glorious 45-yard passing touchdown to A.J. Brown, Jalen didn't flinch on the biggest stage of his career in what was widely lauded as his best performance in an Eagles jersey. He became the first player to be responsible for 4 touchdowns and still lose the Super Bowl, with a fumble in the second quarter proving a costly blemish. This game became fuel for 2023 as he sought to follow up his MVP caliber season with some silverware. Unfortunately, the Eagles' defense didn't hold up their end of the bargain, as a late-season collapse saw the division title slip from their grasp. They were embarrassed by Tampa Bay in the wildcard round, but more worryingly, the team had declined across the board, and nowhere was it more visible than Jalen Hurts' box score. A career high in touchdown passes also came with a career high in interceptions, as the Eagles struggled to cope with major turnover in the coaching staff. As a result, any credit paid to Hurts during the 2022 campaign was swiftly rescinded. It was back to square one, with many arguing he was carried by the team around him. The pressure was on to prove people wrong again in 2024, and this time, he would have one of the league's best running backs to help him. Even through an up-and-down start to the 2024 season, with the Eagles' offense trying to strike a balance between utilizing Saquon Barkley and their star wideouts, who complained about how little they were seeing the ball, the only thing that concerned Jalen Hurts was winning games. With the fewest pass attempts of his career as a starter, the narrative around his subpar arm talent continued, despite the fact he was protecting the ball a lot better. Even if he isn't making eye-catching plays every game, he dramatically reduced his errors from the previous season, with the highest passing completion rate and lowest interception tally in his NFL career. He wasn't the star of the team, as he had been in 2022, but he was in complete control of his offense en route to another 14-win season. Through all of the noise around him, Jalen came to play in the postseason, posting 2 passing touchdowns in the wildcard game against Green Bay, before opening the scoring against LA with a 44-yard rushing touchdown. Although Saquon led the charge in the NFC Championship game, Jalen Hurts kept the offense rolling against the Commanders, letting the ball fly. In his own words, Sirianni finally let him out of his straitjacket. Cameras caught a rare display of emotion as the QB delivered dart after dart to his receivers, while also notching 3 scores on the ground. It's safe to say that Jalen Hurts was out for revenge in Super Bowl 59, and if his journey from Bama's bench to the biggest game in football tells us anything, it's a testament to his incredible work ethic and self-belief. It's not just his 46-20 record as a starter that makes him a winner, but the way in which he carries himself and leads his team into battle every single game. When the Kansas City refs were paving the way for the Chiefs into the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts was going to face his biggest battle yet. The supposed three-peat Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes were expected to keep the game close, but the Eagles and Jalen Hurts took over and dominated for all 4 quarters, putting to rest that Jalen Hurts is underrated because he's now a Super Bowl champion. He was doubted, hated, and disrespected, but Jalen is not like us. He's a winner. If you like Jalen and want more stories like his, stick with us and watch one of these. Thank you for watching The Halftime Show.